Well, hello and welcome to another iTWire video with top IT executives. With me on my right, I have Joe Gagnon. He is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Cloud Services at Cloud Solutions at Aspect Software. He's traveling from Arizona in the US to be with us here in Sydney today. And on my left, I have Fausto Marasco. I'm sorry to say that. I should have practiced it a bit more. Fausto Marasco. I have a funny surname too, so I'm used to it. He's the Executive Director of Premier Technologies, so welcome both to the program.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So first of all, Joe, I'd probably best to, just for those who don't know or who don't know much about Aspect, please tell us what Aspect does, what are its products and services and the customer base that you normally look after.
Yeah, Aspect's a global company. We've been around for 40 years. Serve contact center and consumer enablement solutions. We care about the workforce that runs in the contact center. We care about how to make connections between customers and data and customers and people. We do it for 2,000 customers around the world, and we're in Australia with our partner Premier, and we've been doing that for many years together. We'll talk a little bit more about how that's evolving in a few minutes.
Sure, but I mean 40 years, that's like pre-internet just about. You've been around for...
Yeah, we have over 500 patents. It's a technology-rich company. It is, of course, like many software companies, an amalgamation of many different products over the years that we've sort of assembled into this Aspect software. We work primarily in contact centers, but 50% of our business is in the financial services sector. And we really service the global 1,000 companies.
So who would be just a couple of those big, huge brand names everybody would know?
Chase, a Citibank, HSBC on the banking side, and then on the consumer side, anyone from large retailers all the way through to healthcare and other industries.
Wow, impressive category. And Fausto, please tell us a bit about Premier and who some of your customers are.
Yeah, Premier Technology is not quite 40 years old, but we've actually been going 28 years. So,
wow.
Australian companies survived for 28 years in the marketplace. We've kind of gone through 3 iterations of the company. We started off as a software company back in the early days of computers. We then became a system integrator. That was kind of the second phase.
Yeah, which was very popular at the time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Grew with the contact center industry, and we were very fortunate to be at the contact center industry really at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
About 7-8 years ago, we saw a change happening, and in fact, we've shifted our whole business from being a system integrator to a cloud service provider. So now we focus on delivering the same technologies we did on-premise, but just over the cloud.
Sure, it's really the same thing. The system used to be an on-premise cloud as such,
Yeah.
Now it's an off-premise cloud, servicing many more people all at the same time. So it's natural progression.
Exactly, but the skills and competencies, the things we do, well, they always carry on. So this is really just an alternative delivery method, and actually one that works particularly well for Australia. It means that we can start delivering solutions without the challenges of, do we have the scale, or our business is big enough to support it? We can deliver those solutions to Australian companies regardless of where they are.
And who are some of the big name clients we'd all know?
Telstra, Combank, ANZ, Suncorp Medway. We've been really fortunate to have a lot of really great customers over the years. Many of them have been with us for over 15 years.
Yeah.
We've been an Aspect partner since 1997,
Long time, yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
But
Pre the millennium.
Absolutely. But it's a partnership that's worked very well, and one that we've supported over the years because of the relationship between the companies.
Sure.
Over the years we've represented lots of different American companies. Aspect has really stuck out as much about the relationship with the individuals as the technology and great gear they deliver to the market.
Sure. Well, look, this morning I saw you gave a fantastic presentation called Customer Service 2020, and it's talking about not only the cool contact center industry, but actually how you can use modern technology to really transform the way that you deliver customer service. And you had many different examples. I'll get you to go through those in a moment. But it was really, we're all users of customer service. We've all experienced bad customer service, and when you see cloud and technology improving the experience in so many different ways, it's great to see that there's some real movement at the station happening to get the contact center getting this right. Because it's not just about the software recording if the customer's voice is high-pitched and having someone listening to that after the fact. It's about delivering customer service at the point of the customer contact, which just seems to be lost on a lot of different companies. So with that emotional, after having experienced bad customer service like we all have for so many companies, please, Joe, if you could start with you, just explain some of the really amazing things you spoke, the key things you spoke about this morning about how companies can really transform that experience and how your software and services and cloud does that.
Yeah, I think we're actually at an interesting inflection point. You know, we've spent a lot of money and time over the past 40 years, all of us, in putting infrastructure in and building applications, actually trying to get us to work like the computers work.
Yeah.
I think we're at this shift where we got enough of an abstraction away from the technology that we can start to build human solutions, things that work like we do.
Yeah.
And if you see what's actually being embraced, it's the social context. I mean, Facebook in and of itself wasn't a necessarily interesting technology, but it was an interesting social experiment in connecting people to people.
And what does Facebook do? It asks you a question.
That's
Or
right.
That's what it started doing.
And so we think is that we're in this transition state from starting to put the customer at the center of the relationship, and not just aspirationally, but in a very material way. And by doing that, what we get is the ability to actually create loyalty like not before. We do that by sort of stepping back a little and starting to look at how do we interact with each other. One of the ways we do that is with a question, you know, and it sort of was hard to translate questions into stuff that the computer could understand. And now lots of technologies developed that makes that easy. So
Well, computers understand context now. Siri, all these things.
that's right. So there's part of it which is the cognitive computing that we can use with language, but then there is the sort of cognitive computing that can happen through text. And we can do both. So I don't always have to talk, because there's sometimes talking isn't effective.
Yeah.
I might be interrupted, I might be in a context where I can't do that.
You're in a queue,
But
wherever,
we have
yeah.
definitely become comfortable with our thumbs. And we've trained ourselves over the past number of years to actually start to interact. And now we're saying that interaction between people can actually happen between me and the companies that support me with service or product. And if I have a question, I should just be able to ask that question. And I should be able to do that with SMS or text.
Or
Very
Twitter,
simply,
direct messages, or
any of
anything.
those techniques that we're using over the top with a WhatsApp, with Twitter in a community, or with SMS. And what I do is basically ask simple things like, I want to know my bank balance. You know, do I have any minutes left on my mobile plan? You know, is there some information on this product? So I can actually ask those questions and interpret those through the back-end database into simple answers back.
And that's an intelligent software agent answering. So I mean, but it feels like a human from the examples. You feel like you're speaking to a person. But then if you need to speak to a person, and a live agent is there ready for you if you want, without long interminable waits.
That's right. So because we have visibility at all times into what the contact center is doing and what those experts are doing, so from the moment of interaction, we start to create context. And we actually maintain sort of that context, which means what did I do, what information did I input, and who else might be able to help me based on sort of the series of questions I'm asking. And so if the consumer gets to a point where they want some help, then I can actually tell them, listen, I can give you a call, I can schedule a call back, I can text with you, I can bring the expertise that the agents should bring, right? They shouldn't be doing the things that I could do myself.
Yeah.
I might as well just complete that. And then when I need that assistance, it happens very naturally and seamlessly. We don't ask people to re-enter information, sort of that magical consumer experience. We'd be like, wow, I didn't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it always surprises me when companies have these customer relationship databases, and then they ask all the questions again. It's like, well, what was the previous guy doing? Wasn't he taking notes? But
yeah, I think what happened is that we designed a lot of standalone and siloed parts of the business. Now we're saying, well, the consumer doesn't live in a silo. They live across all of our capabilities, and now we can actually put a layer above that allows those back-end systems to sort of work back together on the consumer's behalf. So we're so excited about this because it's actually really easy to understand. I mean, the implementation is easy. The consumers train themselves, they carry a mobile phone with them, and we can use technology that actually accelerates adoption rather than creates barriers. And we're partnering with Premier to do that here in Australia.
And you get customers who rave about the service, and I mean, good news travels fast, bad news travels faster.
Yeah.
And you must have the ROI just in happy customers who don't churn to somewhere else must be tremendous.
Yeah, the surprise and delight factor is actually probably the easiest time we could ever achieve that. What we find is interesting is how fast we remember the bad customer service stories. What we're realizing is that good customer service is the best form of marketing, right?
Yeah.
In that if we actually put you at the center of it. So what we're saying is put the self back in self-service, but not through the transaction, through the engagement. Participate in the process, and then everything changes. When I am actually part of it, I actually like the outcome.
Yeah, you were saying in the seminar, especially if you had a good service, a good experience, you're very likely to rate the experience very highly. Whereas if you've had a bad experience and it was hands off, or somebody, you know, at the end you hear from the phone company, oh, can you rate, you know, out of 1 to 10 how good it was, and you'll rate a 1 if you got a bad experience. But if you were part of it, you're much more likely to rate yourself highly because, well, you were part of it.
Right.
And it's not just some clever technique, it's engagement.
Right, that's the difference, right? That's a really important word. We're actually participating. And so therefore, when we do that, we have this ability to sort of change the outcome, because actually by having engagement, we're actually probably learning and doing better along the way. We're not trying to make it into a guessing game, figuring out what should I be doing, how should I do it. It's sort of pretty obvious the way to improve customer service.
So, Fausto, I mean, this morning, and Joe as well, this was this your first customer event in Australia? Or?
Yes, there's another one in Melbourne tomorrow.
Sure. And so, I mean, without naming any customers, what were some of the reactions you got directly afterwards, and what were some of the questions that you received?
Actually, very good reactions. A lot of people really interested in how do we actually make all this happen.
I mean, they probably haven't heard of people offering this before, really.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think, generally people know that it's out there. I've got to say the questions I got were more tactical about, so how do we really put this stuff on the ground? How do we make it happen? It's great to talk about it in theory, but let's translate it to limited budgets, poor support, how competing pressures within the organisation. How am I going to make it happen in the context of Australia, right? Where, many organisations here aren't the mega organisations that you might have in the States where they can afford everything. And this is typically the challenge that we find with a lot of our customers. We have some very mature and great operators here in Australia, but they often say to us, look, we've only got 50 seats, 100 seats, how can we cost justify this stuff? And we feel our role is to take the great technology that's around the world, the stuff that really makes sense, delivers value to people, and work with customers to implement it here in Australia in businesses, regardless of their size. And that's where cloud is actually making a lot of this stuff just far more affordable. We can do the infrastructure because, as you know, here in Australia, infrastructure is not cheap. ISDN lines, bandwidth, it's expensive relative to overseas.
Yeah.
So getting that stuff sorted out for organisations and giving people the ability to share that infrastructure still enables them to get the benefits of the applications without having to implement it all themselves.
So has cloud, in one sense, especially in this area, been held back because people didn't know that this existed, or they thought it was too expensive, or they thought it was too difficult to integrate with their existing call centre operations?
There's part of that. I mean, in Australia, we live with a legacy of people having the idea that, ISDN lines, telco's expensive. And to a degree, compared to the rest of the world, it is. Bandwidth, people think, wow, it's expensive.
It's all come down as well.
It has come down, but we're left with that legacy, too hard, too complicated. We don't have the megabucks to be able to do it. We're very much bringing customers through that journey. So, part of what's been holding us back is simply the possibility to understand, the dynamics in the market have changed. Pricing has changed entirely. The other thing is that the people here are very conscious of, these are core systems to us. If we don't get them right, it's going to have a dramatic impact. Can we trust cloud providers? We can trust our own people if we can look and monitor the machines ourselves.
That's it.
But sometimes you bring people through that journey to say, well, okay, you've got the boxes, but what happens when those boxes break? Who do you go to, and how well are you really managing them versus the kind of redundancy and infrastructure that we're able to provide as part of the cloud? So, people are going through that journey of really understanding, well, what actually can a cloud provider give us? How well do they do it? And what scale can we get access to? That's something that, once customers see, they understand, well, okay, this is why people are moving onto the cloud.
Joe, is anyone using, video calls over Skype or, FaceTime to look at something the customer's got? Or, and obviously video calls haven't really taken off the way sci-fi books would have, or movies would have had us believe, because many times it's just inappropriate, you're just busy. But what other, besides video calls, what other things do you think might come in the future? We haven't got mind control or telepathy yet, but the way we're going.
Well, actually, there's a little bit of this, some simplicity in engagement, and part of it is that we've tried to create visual where there's no visual between the agent and the consumer. So there's actually some pretty simple things that we can do that have profound impact. So for example, just take a photo, text the photo to the agent so the agent can be looking at exactly the same thing. They're like, oh, Joe, this is all you have to do. And you're like, oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to be full motion video to get a full immersive experience.
Picture tells 1,000 words.
That's right. And so, for example, if I was setting up a thermostat and I wanted to look at it, or I was actually trying to configure something, or use an espresso machine, it's that photo. It's this sort of the channels. I can chat, I can text, I can email, I can talk. I can send photos. Now we're saying it can be whatever rich experience you want it to be. Could we do a WebRTC, this whole thing about native video through a browser? Sure. If that's appropriate to communicating emotion, because emotion is what video does, that's good to do. But I think that the use case for that is less than imagined. And in some instances, maybe I could use that if I was trying to learn a yoga lesson, for argument's sake, because I just see it. But many times, customer service does not necessitate that. So, but what we really don't care, honestly, is about which it should work for the instance, and we should have the flexibility. The last piece I'd say is that we want to have a history of sort of seeing which is the preferred interaction technique. You know, sometimes people are good chatters or good emails, but imagine if you could see all of that at the same time you're having the interaction with the customer, with that customer relationship data. Now you have a very complete view at the moment of interaction. And now context, continuity, and convenience all come together for really this extraordinary customer experience.
And it's about having all of that and offering it to your customer. I know that I was helping a friend with a robot vacuum cleaner, one of those little round ones. And they had a problem. I had to pull it all apart because there was an issue with some of the brushes, and I lost a particular part, got thrown away. And I'm trying to talk to the customer service guy to get him to send me the right part. And I'm trying to describe it. You know, I can see he's not understanding. So I said, look, I'll just email you a photograph, right? So I emailed him a photo and waited a couple of, a minute or so, and you could then see exactly what I was talking about. And so I used, email and things that some customer service people at that point might not necessarily have because they're using a corporate system. I don't know if they have, company email. And so it would have been much nicer if that company, which was a small company, had some sort of a system where we're just chatting away through an app, through text, and it's rich. So I've got the video, got voice, because I would have used it, and people would use this. I'm glad to see that this is being implemented, and it's nice that it's because as I was saying before in the intro, the first time I remember some years ago, like 10 years ago or more, hearing about the, it's the pitch of the voice, and we're recording everything, and it's like it seemed to be more about them rather than, even though they were couching it as being for consumers, it was more about their understanding, which is important too, but there's a real shift now with this cloud, which wasn't there before.
Sometimes what we fail to realise is we often actually have all the components that make up a complete solution. The problem is a lot of our mindset is, we've got to have that one killer app, like they thought video, the fact that we had to do everything over video, talk and see at the same time. But we've got voice, we've got email, we've got the ability to send pictures back and forth. The skill is actually in stitching these things together, because not every channel is right 100% of the time. Different channels are right at different parts of the time. In being able to stitch together and integrate them all, you can deliver pretty good service across all the different use cases that customers might need at that point in time. So a lot of the tools are actually already there. It's how we use them, or how some organisations are unable to use them, that's the problem.
It's like life, stitching experiences together. So just from both of you, what are your views on the cloud computing trends over the next 12 months, and then looking into the crystal ball the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's cloud computing. Wow, it's like sort
of, not necessarily cloud, but aspect in general.
Yeah, I think that we're at a point where it's going to be hard to justify building infrastructure anymore. We can't generate. For corporations ourselves, right? We all same analogies. We don't build power plants anymore. We don't build utility. It's a utility, and a utility that can be provided better when it's provided by centralized service and capability. Price points come down, reliability goes up, disaster recovery is built in. You start to see all the improvements that you want. You can have real-time updates. I no longer have to work 3 in the morning on a Saturday to do upgrades. It's just going to be harder to justify how you would be any better at provisioning infrastructure. So the cloud as a provisioning infrastructure with an evolved architecture which allows multi-tenancy, also allows a private version for security,
hybrid clouds if you need it.
Hybrid clouds. It's just a better architecture, and it's just a natural evolution. So it's accelerating. So then the question is, once you do that, then how do you spend your time and where do you put your focus? Because if I'm not worried about just operating and making sure it comes on, it's now about enablement, and that's sort of what this partnership's about, which is that we put in place the infrastructure, we operated at the 5 nines level. And now what do? Now we have to get back at our investments around consumers and how some of these tools have evolved to allow us to do that better. Sort of really rethinking the consumer journey and how does that consumer go through the experience, and have we enabled sort of the way they live today? And so cloud becomes this enabler of doing more, right? Because you took care of all the stuff that I was spending time on, now I can do the next wave, which has an impact on the people who matter the most, which is my customer.
Yeah, and the customer who is using your product, not letting it collect dust on a shelf.
That's right. Yeah, we are going to see a big transition from people who just buy things versus people who buy and use. The buy and use consumer is much more valuable than the who just buys. And the way to get buy and use to happen is to actually be able to provide content, advice, support in the process, and make it easy to do that. You can do that with self-service and an agent connected to that.
And Fausto?
So we tactically see here in Australia this real transition where people are learning to trust the cloud, right? And you know, that's a valid journey for them to make. People are starting to ask far better questions, not just assuming, well, yeah, the cloud's there, it's magical, it's going to work. People are really wanting to understand, so tell us about your infrastructure, tell me about the resiliency, because that's a story I've got to sell back internally, that actually this stuff is better than what we're doing ourselves, with more option and more coverage. Having gone through that journey, then organisations start realising, you know what, this stuff's going to change our business. All of a sudden, we're able to start doing different things. I mean, we speak to contact centres where now they don't run regional call centres, they run virtual contact centres through the whole organisation across the whole of Australia. Once you start doing that, all of a sudden you start realising, you know what, we can back each other up, we're freeing up resources, we can do all sorts of other things that we simply couldn't do before when we had to really be slaves of our own limitations or the infrastructure we had on the ground. And it's that transformation of the business that's really the exciting part, because people are starting to open their mind to the possibilities of how they can actually fundamentally change their business on the top of what the cloud can offer.
Now, I wanted to ask you both what was the best piece of advice you ever received to get you where you are today. But before I do, Joe, tell us, you're going to be speaking at South by Southwest in a couple of weeks. What do you plan on talking about there?
Yeah, it's a fantastic conference, as we all know.
Famous,
a lot of really pretty interesting people. The idea is, how does content enable millennial engagement? And so millennials are saying, I need more content. You make me smarter, I will be more loyal to you. You provide me it at the right time when I need it, and now I become slightly almost dependent on you, but in a good way. Dependent in terms of reliance, not in terms of sort of, you know, submissiveness. And so what we're bringing there is this idea that you have a responsibility as a product or service provider to bring content, and not just content like sort of, you know, some of the guys who have moved from editorial and marketing, and it's the stuff in between, which is a slight manipulation. This is about enablement of my life and better use of assets. So for example, in the banking space, you know, there are these guys in the middle who are doing, you know, like a mint.com, who are bringing advice to consumers to better manage their assets and their resources. That's actually content enabled, and that actually changes the relationship forever.
Sounds like your best advice might have been about providing more content.
Yes, exactly.
So can you share what the best advice was?
Yeah, I think my best advice was this idea of situational awareness. If you really want to understand something in life, you got to go see it.
Yeah.
And so I've spent the majority of my business career going around the world and meeting people and observing.
Yeah.
And I really learn as an observer, and then I look for patterns. So, you know, I've done the 4 million miles in the air. I've been to 20, 30, 40 different countries. I can't even remember anymore. Yeah. In the past year at Aspect, I've been on planes 175,000 miles and been in all our regions. It makes me feel confident about our strategic direction. It's been validated across the world, and we put it out there for people to give us input and reaction to it. It's been very positive. You know, people stopping me in the middle of a presentation and say, could I take a picture of your slides?
Yeah.
And because it's engaging and embracing. And so situational awareness. You know, actually, one of the generals in the US, he said that, you know, you can't commute to the war, this is General Petraeus.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of a mindset, which is, yeah, you can stay back and sit at your desk, but you know, that's not really how you learn, and that's not how you get better. So that's what I've spent my entire life doing, and it was the best advice I ever got.
And Fausto?
You know, it's probably 20 odd years ago now, we were involved in an engagement with utility, and we were a subcontractor then to one of the very large global providers. The guy one time said to me, don't ever presume to understand the level of service customers want. Because in the IT industry, we're kind of fixated on faster, better, cheaper. Computers are more powerful, they're cheaper. We always used to think that, maybe people just wanted better, cheaper, more effective. Sometimes customers actually want to go the other way. Sometimes they want to move up the value chain with you. And that was a very important lesson that, we always don't assume, but ask the customer why are they doing this? What's meaningful to them? Is this going to help them generate more value for the business, or are they really trying to reduce costs? So keeping your mind open to the possibilities, real important role.
Great. So just the very final question, which is, and it's always my long final question, but do you have, both of you, any final messages just for iTWire readers and viewers, but also for your current and potential customers? I'll start with you.
The title of today was Consumer Enablement 2020. We think that we have sort of a journey of 5 years ahead of us to really rethink how we're going to engage with our consumers, who are ultimately our customers. And we have this really unique opportunity, if we get it right, to actually change sort of the dynamics of the way the business operates. And we believe that if you can monetize a relationship, that it's very durable, right? And it becomes something very lasting. And that's what we should really be doing. And we do that by having sort of a very interesting shift, the power shift from just the brand to the consumer, the ability to trust that the customer will make a good decision on our behalf. And we do that by giving them capability, giving them the capability to interact the way they want, to live the way they want, and to embrace us. And it's an outside-in view of the world. So sort of my advice is, take this time to actually make a difference, to not just sort of, let things happen to us. Challenger brands are all around, but we have an opportunity with a great starting point with our customers in the market, with partners like us, to really embrace this change that's going to go on around us and stay leaders and not have to worry about sort of what happens into the future.
I think Steve Jobs put it as making a dent in the universe.
That's right. We think that that's possible. And
yeah.
it's really actually not that hard. The best part about this is a lot of the hard work has sort of been done.
Yep.
Now this is sort of just this emotion of how would I build a better human capability to interact with people who just want to do that.
And Fausto?
So I'm going to pitch my message differently, because I've been a big iTWire fan, and I know there's a lot of other Australian IT companies that read your publication. I wanted to actually make my message to other Australian organisations, because the best thing you can do is start up a business here in Australia. We've had good fortune doing it, and I wish that fortune to others. But my message to all the other guys in businesses in Australia is, the cloud and the revolution in IT is breaking down so many more barriers that you can think of. We're now finally at a point where we're located in the right end of the world with a huge population, where what's of value in the marketplace is processes, skills and knowledge. With the cloud, these skills are easily transported anywhere. So now organisations based here in Australia can be doing things right throughout Asia Pac or the world, and we're not limited by either resources or our ability to bring technology around. This is truly a golden time for people in IT in the Australian marketplace. And Australia is such a great educator of how to do things differently for a wide marketplace. So guys, take advantage of it. It's a great time in the marketplace, and best of luck.
Well, thank you very much to you both, Fausto and Joe. I hope to be texting some of the companies I deal with very soon.
Yes.
And Joe, great luck at SWSX.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.